Hello, and welcome to my podcast. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about using GarageBand on an iPad with a Yamaha PSR E463 keyboard. Now, I'm going to be using my iPad with my keyboard, but I want you to understand that you could also use an iPhone. Everything I'm going to say about the iPad works just as well with the iPhone because the very same version of GarageBand runs on both the iPad and the iPhone. Let me start with this question. With 'em. What's in it for me? That's always a question we need to ask ourselves anytime we are considering about investing our time in something. What's in it for me? And what I want to do in this video is explain why would I use GarageBand in an iPhone or iPad? And what's it going to do for me? So let me start with that. Why use GarageBand with an E463 keyboard? And there are 3 or 4 reasons, and here they are. Number 1, my keyboard can record up to 6 tracks, but my GarageBand records 32 tracks. So if I'm doing a complicated piece of music and I need more than 6 tracks, GarageBand on my iPad is a wonderful, elegant solution. 5 times as many musical tracks in GarageBand as the built-in 6 tracks on my E463 keyboard. Secondly, I have much more control of the quality of the recorded music. And I'll go through in just a moment exactly what can you do to the recorded music once you've got it in GarageBand. Next, it allows me to share my songs with other people. I can either email them my songs, or I can send my songs in a text message, or maybe once I'm done, I will send my GarageBands to somebody else, and they can pull my GarageBand files into their computer or their iPhone or iPad and add to it. Years ago, I did this with a friend down in Oklahoma. He and I would send our GarageBand files back and forth, and we kept adding music to it. So we were able to perform together or play together by sharing those GarageBand files. It also allows me to share or even possibly sell my songs on the internet. That's another reason I might want to plug my keyboard into GarageBand. Some people look at the 32 tracks and they say, well, why would you ever need 32 tracks? Here's the reality. Most songs have 5 or 6 tracks. There's a rhythm guitar, a lead guitar, a drummer, usually a bass guitar, often someone playing keyboards, and often a singer. And there are hundreds of thousands of bands around the world that have somewhere between 3 and 6 members. So 6 tracks is what I typically might need to record a rock and roll song or a country song or a folk song or something like that. But if you want to record Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and I have, you need a lot of tracks. You need a track for each one of these instruments: the flutes, the bassoons, the French horns, the timpani, the triangle, first violin, second violins. You need 4 tracks for the sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses that sing in the choir. If you add all of these tracks up, guess what? You need 32 tracks to record Beethoven's Ninth Symphony as it is played by most symphony orchestras in the world. That's why you need 32 tracks. Now, granted, most of us aren't going to be recording Beethoven or Bach or Mozart, but my point is, if you wanted to, You can do it with your little keyboard and GarageBand. And just to prove it, 14, 15 years ago, I sat down and I recorded Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And you are looking at it on my Macintosh. And it took me about a week and a half to record all of it. And I'm going to play just a little bit of it so you can get a sense of what it sounded like. Okay, now I didn't use all 32 tracks, but I did use 14 tracks. And yes, it took me about a week and a half working every day to record this. This is going way, way back. So what does GarageBand actually record? When I plug my keyboard into my iPad, what am I recording? And the answer is, I'm recording, or I can record, two different things. I can record MIDI data coming out of my E463 into the iPad. Now, in this lesson, I'm not going to explain what MIDI is. If you don't know, there are lots of YouTube movies that will explain what MIDI is. But understand that I can send MIDI information from my keyboard into my iPad using GarageBand. The other thing that I can do is I can send the sound out of my 463 keyboard and record the sound of the music that I'm playing into GarageBand. So what do I record? Either MIDI data or actual musical sound from the keyboard. My choice. So once you have your song or your track recorded in GarageBand, what can you do to edit it? Because I said you have much more control in GarageBand than I do trying to tinker with it and improve it in the keyboard. Well, let me go through what I can do. First of all, I can control the individual volume of each track. So I can make the violins louder than the basses, or I can make the piano louder than the guitars. I get to choose how loud each instrument is. I can pan left or right. In a symphony orchestra, the violins are always on the left. The cellos and the basses, the double basses, they're always on the right. The timpani drummer is always on the left back. The flute players are always right in the middle. The trombones. So I can distribute the instruments the way they would actually be sitting in a symphony orchestra. I can move the sound to left or right. I can turn on a compressor, and if you don't know what this means, there are a bunch of videos in YouTube that will explain what compression can do. Just understand, I have compression built into GarageBand. I have a visual equalizer, EQ. I can go in and I can tinker with the frequencies of the recording. I can emphasize the singer's voice. I can make the drums sharper. It's like an audio engineer in a recording studio. I've got a lot I can do to the sounds I record. I can simply add a little more treble or a little more bass to any one of the recorded tracks. I can turn on echo. Hello, 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 hello. And I can turn on reverb, so it sounds like I'm in a large room or an auditorium or a cathedral. And echo and reverb, although they're similar, these are two very different things. I can change the instrument playing on a MIDI track. So let's say up here, I recorded this track as a violin, but I come along a day or two later and I decide, you know, I would rather hear a harpsichord play that, or I would rather, instead of the violin, I want a flute to play that. And I can change what instrument is playing the music that I recorded previously. As I'm working on a song, I can solo or mute a track. So I can say, you know what, turn off the guitar, turn off the drums. I just want to hear the rhythm guitar and the singers. So I can turn on or turn off any of the tracks in any combination. Very handy. I can transpose. I do this all the time. I play everything in the key of C. It's simple. But when it comes time to sing, I might like to raise the song to the key of E or the key of D. And with just a couple of presses of my finger, I can take a song that I previously recorded in, let's say, the key of C, and I can change it to any key I want. So I can raise and lower the entire recorded song. Quantization, what's this? Quantization has to do with the timing. Let's say I've recorded a piano, and now I'm going to come and record a guitar playing along with the piano. But let's say I make some mistakes. I hit some of the notes too soon and some of the notes a little too late. My timing is off. No problem. With Quantize, I can go in and make everything fit together. I can make all of my tracks sync up perfectly, even though I may not be able to play in perfect time. Great feature. I can correct an individual note. Let's say we're looking at this and this note right here is an A and it should have been a B. You know what? I don't have to record the whole thing over again. I can come in here with my finger, grab that note, and drag it on the musical staff to where it should be. So I can control each and every individual MIDI note to make any corrections where I've made mistakes. Perhaps what I want to do is I've recorded my song, I took 6 or 7 tracks, and now I want to sing with myself. I can record myself singing. I've done this a lot. I want to record myself singing harmony with myself. So I may record me singing the melody on one track and then turn around and have me sing the harmony on another track. I can sing with myself in GarageBand. Millions of people do this every day. So what devices can run GarageBand? Well, you can run it on an iPhone. You can run it on your iPad, or you can run it on your Macintosh computer. Now, the iPhone and the iPad are identical. They both work exactly the same. It's the very same software. The Macintosh version is far, far more powerful. This thing is an entire recording studio. If you went out and bought the hardware to replace what this software can do, you would spend somewhere between $35,000 and $45,000 in hardware. And how do I know that? Because years ago I attended a workshop of about 100 college music professors. And a couple of professors went through GarageBand and they analyzed what it could do and how much it would cost to buy the hardware in a studio. And according to these professors, there's somewhere close to $40,000 worth of hardware built into the software of GarageBand. So, how much does all of this cost? You love this answer. It costs you nothing. It's free. You can download GarageBand in your iPhone, your iPad, or your Macintosh and not pay 1 penny. How's that for a good price? So let's get technical. What do you need to connect an iPad up to my Yamaha E463 keyboard? The answer is I need 2 things. I'm going to spell it out for you. I need a Lightning to USB 3 camera adapter, and you get that from Apple. You can log on to the Apple online store and buy it, and it'll be in your hands in a couple of days. You also need a USB printer cable, and this is somewhere around $7. And I say somewhere because do you want a 3-foot cable or a 5-foot cable or a 10-foot cable? And the price will vary. So this is what the lightning adapter looks like. It's this little pigtail thing. It's only about 5 or 6 inches long. This plugs into your iPad, and this is where your USB printer cable plugs. And then you need a cable that looks like this. Now, most USB connectors are this type. It's called an A connector. We need one that has an A connector on one end and a B connector on the other, because this is what plugs into the back of my keyboard, and I'll talk about that more in details. So this is a typical printer cable. That's why I called it a USB printer cable, because it has both an A and a B connector on the end of it. This is what I need. Now here's the good news. This cable carries both the MIDI data from the keyboard into the iPad, and it also carries sound. So I can record the sound of my keyboard going into my iPad using GarageBand to record the sound. I think that's pretty cool. One cable does both. Okay, here you go. Here's my iPad. Here's my camera adapter, and one end, the lightning connector, plugs right into your iPad or your iPhone. And here is the USB printer cable. One end of it plugs right into the camera adapter. So where does this cable go? Well, let's turn the keyboard around and I'll show you. Where do you plug the USB cable into your E463 keyboard? The answer is into the 2-host USB connector on the back of the keyboard. Let me show you a picture. It goes right here. And on your keyboard it says 2-host. Okay? So that's where it plugs into your keyboard. So once you've got it all hooked up, where does the music play? Where does it come from once we've recorded it? And the answer is it comes from either your E463 speakers and or it comes out of the iPad speakers. So I like to listen to it coming from the speakers of my keyboard as I'm recording. So where can I share my music on the internet? And there's lots of answers to this. I'm just going to give you some ideas of a few popular ones. Number one is SoundCloud. And I have several songs that I've uploaded to SoundCloud. Secondly is Vimeo. Next is something called Audio Mac. Next is something called Google Play. This is a place people can share their music. TikTok. A lot of teenagers love to put their songs or portions of their songs up on TikTok. And of course, good old YouTube. Lord knows how many untold tens of millions of songs have been uploaded to YouTube. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to record Pachelbel's Canon in D. And I'm going to use 3 different instruments, each recording into their own track in GarageBand. I'm going to set up a double bass, which is that great big thing that sits at the back of the orchestra on the right-hand side. And I'm going to record that as a MIDI instrument in GarageBand. And then on a second track, I'm going to record a violin. And once again, I will use the violins built into GarageBand, and I'll be sending MIDI data from my keyboard into GarageBand. And then lastly, I'm going to record a harpsichord. But what I will do is I will set up my E463 keyboard as a harpsichord, and I will record the audio from my 463 into a track that I've set up in GarageBand to record the audio. So I'm going to keep this simple. Now, I'm not going to record the entire Pachelbel's Canon. It takes me 9.5 minutes to play the whole song. And trust me, you're not going to sit here for 9.5 minutes watching me play this. We'll do just a little bit at the beginning, just so you see how it's done. This is a screenshot of my iPad, and this is what I've got set up. I've already set up a track for the double bass, the string double bass. And I have a track set up here for the harpsichord. Now, I will be using the harpsichord built into my E463. So this is an audio track. I will be recording the audio sound of the harpsichord as I play it on my keyboard. Then I've set up a track that is a violin, and this will be a MIDI track. So as I play on my keyboard, I will be recording a MIDI violin into this track. Now, I've already gone in earlier this morning, and I have recorded the string double bass because I didn't want to bore you watching me do it for 5 or 6 minutes. I'll show you how I do it live, but that's why this track is already here, because I've recorded a couple of minutes of the 9.5 minutes of the song. So this is what it looks like on my iPad or on my iPhone. And all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be clicking on this with my finger to indicate which track. So I'll touch here with my finger, and then all I have to do is hit this red button with my finger, and I start recording in that track. And then I'll hit this button to stop. Okay, that's what my screen looks like. So let's go to the E463 keyboard and record some music, specifically Pachelbel's Canon, in GarageBand that I've got running on an iPad. All right, here we are at the E463 keyboard, and I have my iPad plugged in. And I've already gone in, as I showed you before, and I have set up the 3 instruments that I'm going to record. First, we're going to record the double bass. And this is what it sounds like. And it repeats that over and over and over again for 9.5 minutes. Got to be the most boring thing in classical music. Anyway, so I have selected the double bass, and to make sure I stay on time, I'm going to turn on the metronome to keep me right on time. So we're ready to start, and I simply reach out and touch the red dot, which is start record. Here we go. Okay, that's enough of that. You get the idea. So let me go back to my tracks. And there it is. That's what we've just recorded. Now let me clarify what I've just done. This double bass is inside GarageBand, and I have been sending MIDI data from my keyboard. And what you're hearing is the double bass that is built into GarageBand. The sound is not coming from my keyboard. It's coming from the iPad. So I tell it what note to play, and it plays that MIDI double bass. Okay? Now, in the interest of time, I went ahead yesterday. Clean house here a bit. Let me get rid of this. Yesterday, I went in and I recorded 4 or 5 minutes of that. I didn't want to sit here and bore you watching me do that. So this is what I've got. I have already recorded that. Now what I need to do is I need to switch to the violin track. And let's set this up. So now we've got this. There's my violin. So I will rewind. I don't need the metronome anymore because I've got the double bass keeping track for my time. I will rewind this. And now I'm ready to record the violin as we listen to the double bass. Ready? Going to tap the little red circle, which is record. Okay, that's enough of that. And let me go to the track view. And there it is. There is the violin. Here's the double bass. And now what I want to do is I want to record the piano. I originally thought I would do a harpsichord, but I've decided the grand piano is the way I want to go. So I've got my keyboard set up. Now this track is different than the other two. The first two tracks have been MIDI tracks. This track is an audio track, which means I'm actually playing the sound of my keyboard and recording that sound in GarageBand. So this is the grand piano that I've got set up in my keyboard, and as the sound comes out of this and it goes into GarageBand, I'm recording the actual sound of this keyboard in GarageBand. The other two tracks are MIDI tracks. I'm using the instruments built into GarageBand. Here, we're using the real sound of this real keyboard. So I'm going to rewind it, and I'll let the double bass start, and then the violin will come in, and then I'll come in. That's what I'm going to add. Ready? Tap, record. Okay, and we go back to the track view. And there on the bottom, notice that it's blue indicating this is an audio recording. So we recorded the audio sound coming out of this keyboard
And that's what went into this track. So 3 tracks, 2 of them are MIDI instruments. The piano was the real recording of the grand piano coming out of this keyboard. So let me show you what I've done with this. I recorded this yesterday and I saved it out and I pulled it into iMovie and I made a little movie, and I want to just show you the beginning of what I did. Okay, so the sound you're going to hear was done on this keyboard and GarageBand, and I simply added pictures to the sound using iMovie. Okay, hope you enjoy.